Thank you very much, guys, for waiting, for the people who signed on for waiting, and for everybody else who joined. My name is Ram Siddharth. I am the head of Ocean Consolidations here at Flexport, and I'll be the moderator for the day. A quick few, housekeeping topics. Today, we're welcoming you all for the webinar that's titled Beyond FCL and LCL, a look into optimizing ocean freight with OceanMatch, a Flexport product. Today, we'll be talking about OceanMatch, but let's quickly get some of the administrative details out of the way. This webinar is 1 hour. We will cover about 45 minutes of content and about 15 minutes or so of Q&A. You can submit questions at any point during the webinar. The Q&A box is located in the bottom right of the GoToWebinar control panel. We will answer as many questions as we can before the end of the webinar. And as a reminder, this webinar is being recorded. You will all be getting a copy of the recorded webinar within 24 hours. So please do not worry about taking down notes or copying. We will make it available. And with that, let's get started. So the agenda for the day, we'll go through the topics listed on your screen over here. We will be talking fundamentally the differences between FCL, LCL, and OceanMatch, the cost savings and the benefits, and of course, we have a guest with us, a valued Flexport client, Eric from Tommy John, who will also be talking a little bit about their supply chain, and then we'll go into the Q&A from there. Just a little bit about the two of us. I'm going to introduce myself, and I'm going to let Eric introduce himself right after. As I mentioned earlier, I am the VP and Global Head of Ocean Consolidations at Flexport. As part of Ocean Consolidations, my team manages all LCL, OceanMatch, and Bias Console products. In my role, I pretty much manage a team across several continents who are essentially running the operation CFS to CFS. We run our own ocean consolidations across several of these lanes today, and that's what has helped us develop these new products. And I previously worked for global freight forwarders, notably C.H. Robinson and Toll Global Forwarding, based out of the East Coast. And I'm here today to talk about OceanMatch. Eric, would you like to please introduce yourself?
Thanks, Ram. It's a pleasure to be speaking here today. So as Ram said, I'm the operations manager here at Tommy John. In my current capacity, I oversee not only the inbound logistics, but also our outbound and fulfillment from B2C and B2B. In the past, I've been on both the freight forwarding side, and I've also been on the BCO side as well. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Eric. So let's quickly dive into the meat of the presentation then. And I can promise you this is not going to be one of those sessions where we're doing death by PowerPoint. We're going to have a very few number of slides and mostly to just help guide the conversation along. And I hope you guys find it intuitive and interesting. Just, kind of a very, very high level presentation of very simply how FCL works today. Traditionally, a full container load when a customer in the United States books a shipment, we ship an empty container to the factory. The factory loads the container themselves, seals the container right there, ships it directly to the port, gets it across the oceans, and then the reverse happens once it gets, let's say, United States or Los Angeles for the sake of argument. The process is considered very simple in some ways for shippers, and the simplicity of it is what drives customers to rush towards trying to build their own full container loads and not having to deal with the other solutions out there, which tend to be a little bit more complicated. And what we've noticed is over the last several decades, the complexities servicing around LCL and other products has driven people more and more towards controlling their destiny by moving to FCL, and that has had a very skewed, interesting impact in terms of how these containers are utilized. When we were scoping out this product, the one thing we understood was we went through all the containers in the world coming to the United States. We looked through the data to see what the percentage of utilization on these containers were on average. Now, we factored in both weight and volume because we do understand containers weigh out before they dim out. And it was factored into the calculation to assume, to arrive at the conclusion that on average, we were at about 64.6% by our estimates in terms of utilization, roughly 65%. Two-thirds of containers are filled, a third of these containers move empty, and this is because our customers or importers around the world have felt the need to control their destiny by shipping full containers versus having to deal with other solutions out there that tend to be a little bit more complicated and also pricey, right? So we went out when we started, developing as a company. When we started out as Flexport, 4.5 years ago, 5 years ago, when I joined on board, we were a much smaller company, and by virtue of that, a lot of our customers were shipping a lot of LCL, tended to be a lot smaller customers, and we realized that, hey, we need to improve this solution out there in the market, and we set our minds to building a consolidation network completely from the ground up. And over the last several years, we've been gradually investing in a Flexport exclusive consolidation network. And this is essentially operated by Flexport. The container is only carrying cargo for 100% of Flexport customers only. We do not take cargo from any other third-party co-loaders in our boxes. And we've built this across several lanes coming out of Asia, both into the US and into Europe and into Canada for that matter. And we're going to be continuing to invest in that network. We firmly believe that a very solid solution can be a viable option for a number of customers to begin moving or making their supply chains a lot more agile. The dynamics of the market are changing. What was expected of customers, when they're bringing in products into the United States 5 years ago is not the same today. As you guys probably have read a number of other articles, the requirements as a consumer, we have started demanding speed. To quote the famous Jeff Bezos, there's two things that customers always are going to want. This is never going to change. They're always going to want something that is going to be cheaper. They're always want something that's going to be faster. This is a market dynamic that's never going to change, and we want to build a product to cater to that need. So very simply how LCL works, let's assume we have 5 factories, shipments get produced, they show up at our origin warehouse, we consolidate over there, we clear customs over there, we file the required entry paperwork, ship it out, and on the reverse side, we have a warehouse where we deconsolidate and we ship out to the customer piece by piece on whatever they're looking for us to do. The majority of the innovation and the technology that we're driving in is to drive accountability through this, both in terms of timestamp milestones and also in terms of tracking every single carton. Now, if you are a Flexport customer today, you will notice every single carton in our console boxes will come in labeled. You will have accountability to the last single carton. If God forbid, if 1 or 2 cartons are ever missing, we can tell you with certainty which exact carton carrying which exact SKU is the one we're missing right now. So we've gone that deep into our supply chain and invested in technology and invested in infrastructure to support that visibility for our customers. And that is why we believe that our LCL product is world class. Now, taking this one step further, there is this general cusp between when LCL becomes, not a viable solution after a certain volume threshold when customers move over to FCL. Because just like as you see on the screen, there is a cost associated with consolidation at origin and a deconsolidation at destination. And when you account for that, LCL becomes a little bit more expensive at a much earlier scale than a full container. And associated risks involved with the perceived risks in the market from customers lead to people moving over to FCL much quicker. Now, what we realized was that that threshold needs to move up much further. Today, depending on the trade lane, customers tend to move between 15 to 20 cubic meters from LCL to FCL when it just makes sense to get a full container. But that just leads to so much inefficiency, right? On a lane like TPEB, which is basically Trans-Pacific eastbound, coming from Asia into the United States, you are looking at a 20-foot container costing 80% the cost of a 40-foot container, roughly, and you're getting less than 50% space in that container. So there is this general a discrepancy in terms of prices. There's a fixed cost of moving a container, which is what is driving this. But if you're shipping a 20-foot container, you are essentially paying more per unit cubic meter than you were shipping in a 40-foot. And that is what led us to say, hey, we can make supply chains more efficient. And that is what led us down the path of creating OceanMatch. And to kind of simplify this further a little bit, many people have tried making this product work. The fundamental difference on why our product works is what I will be talking about here on this slide, is when you have two unknowns, when you're trying to match shipments between two factories, you have two complete unknowns, and there are too many things that can go wrong that can derail the consolidation process. So what we have done is the investment we made in our LCL product is what is helping us make OceanMatch better. When a customer books a shipment with, let's say, 30, 40, 50, 55 CBMs in a box, right? You're anywhere between 20 and 80, 75% utilization in a container, and the rest of the space is empty. We are looking to match LCL cargo that we've already built up several years over, and we have a ready repository of shipments catching that weekend sailing. So what we essentially do is a customer books a container saying, hey, I have 40 cubic meters going from Shanghai to LA, and this is the commodity, and we take into effect, essentially into decision 12 different factors. 6 of those are very simple factors like weight, volume, commodity, where is it coming from, where is it going to, and in terms of the transit time expectations, and 6 other proprietary Flexport factors that help us match these cargo on what is an ideal fit to take that tail of the container. And you can be 100% rest assured that the person taking that tail of the container or the 2 shipments are 100% Flexport customers. They live in our platform. They go through the same compliance expectations that you went through as a customer. So you can expect that your cargo, your valuable cargo, is not traveling with a customer who does not take compliance seriously or who does not do the right due diligence in their shippers. And that's the Flexport stepping in and helping build that standard and expectation so that you can be rest assured that you are shipping in a secure supply chain. So essentially, the container, when a customer books, we ship the empty container to the factory in a very simple milk run fashion. So the container stops, the factory loads the container themselves, because when you ship 40, 45 cubic meters, you do not want to be paying consolidation fees at the CFS. It's just not how that works. So we ship the container, the factory loads the container then is blocked and braced at the factory, and then the container stops at our warehouse along the way for a very quick pit stop and gets complementary cargo loaded at the tail of the container. We limit only a maximum of 2 more shipments. The entire OceanMatch container cannot have more than 3 shipments in it. We limit it at that stage, and then we also try and palletize the cargo wherever we can to make sure that it doesn't negatively affect utilization, but at the same time makes operations a lot easier. So then it's loaded, sealed, shipped out, leaves the port of, let's call it Shanghai. It comes into the destination port of Los Angeles. We pull the container, comes into our warehouse, stops to make a very quick pit stop. We only unload the LCL shipments that were anyway going to get unloaded at our CFS. It's a very quick turnaround from there. We have invested in capacity for this to make sure that this gets priority. And once the container is unloaded, your FCL portion, the head loaded portion, is shipped directly to the customer. The customer gets to unload their own cargo. Now, what you will notice here is the FCL customer is getting just the ex-FCL customer is getting essentially the exact same experience as shipping an FCL, They're accounting for 1 to 2 days in extra transit time to allow us the consolidation and deconsolidation. They do not have to pay extra fees. They're paying the exact same fees as if they were shipping FCL. And they get the benefits of the underutilized space, and we're able to monetize that space. So what you can perceive this to be is essentially we are bringing back 35% more capacity into the market without adding a single container, without adding a single ocean going vessel. We are essentially monetizing that space, creating efficiencies which was earlier just going for waste. That is essentially what this product, embodies, and it's done wonders for us. We have very happy customers who adopted to this, and Eric being one of them. We'll talk about it in a few minutes. So just to kind of give a little bit of a quick stats on where we are, right? So we started doing OceanMatch pilots in Q4 for a very small curated list of customers who were very generous enough in letting us experiment with this and build a product out of this. And in Q1 is when we launched this product out to pretty much our wider customer base. And if you notice here, when we did the analysis in 2018, we had 7,500 shipments roughly that were eligible shipments that were moving, that were underutilized on our LCL console lanes. And these are lanes where we have LCL cargo moving on our own network. This is not LCL that's co-loaded or out or anything. This is, we have our own homegrown LCL network. On those same lanes, you have containers moving that are underutilized. The average utilization on these containers is 48%. Now, this is significantly lower than the 65 that was the market phenomenon, and that's the reason it's coming to 48% over here is because we are benchmarking all utilization against a 40 high Q, which is by far the most efficient way to ship, which is by far the most commonly available equipment in every part of the world. And that is why we feel that the unit economics makes the most sense in a 40 high Q when you fill it up to the brim. And 48% was the utilization on these containers. Now, had we had the opportunity to consolidate these OceanMatch shipments into containers with complementary LCL cargo, the same amount of volume could have essentially moved on 4,500 containers instead. That's 3,000 containers fewer. And that is assuming we hit an average utilization of 80% on those containers. These are not even 100% utilization. And let's be very honest, achieving 100% utilization in a freight is like playing Tetris. It's not going to work. You are in a very good position when you're anywhere between 80 and 90%. Anything more than that, it's very few and far in between. So if we had moved these 7,500 containers into 4,500 containers essentially by deploying OceanMatch as a viable solution, that could have resulted in a direct cost savings for our customers by about $5 million. And this is direct cost in ocean freight savings only. That's $5 million. Now, what we also noticed was when you are buying in full containers, you are essentially placing purchase orders with your factory, and you are essentially waiting for them to produce enough to fill that container up. It doesn't matter if it's 48% utilization or 80% utilization. There is no company over here that makes a purchase order that is based on what the factory can produce in terms of capacity. That is, all purchase orders are based on what your demand numbers say, what you believe your customers can purchase. And then you make the purchase order, and no factory production capacity is aligned with container capacity. It's just that's not how this works. So there's a general misalignment across the way that's leading to an extended period of dwell time. You have factories producing over several days to have enough inventory to fill a container. Our average numbers, what we're seeing was between the time when the cargo was technically supposed to be ready and when the container shipped out, then this includes for cargo ready date being moved several times because of several other reasons. We are seeing that there was a 7-day savings in dwell time when you moved in OceanMatch, because OceanMatch essentially makes your supply chain more agile. You are not waiting for your factory to produce, let's call it 1,000 units of inventory that you purchased. As you ship 200, we will ship out 200. Now you're essentially optimizing for a flow of inventory rather than trying to secure your supply chain from any possible breakdown. Because when you optimize for protecting your supply chain from any possible breakdown, you are going to have to compromise on cost. You're going to have to absorb a lot of inventory carrying costs because you're going to have to purchase in a much bigger quantity and essentially spend money. Now, we did the 7 days dwell time on the cost of the goods on the 7,500 containers. If we applied a 3% APM rate of finance in the market, and that's a very reasonable amount today if you're going to go out and finance, that would have saved an indirect cost savings of another $3.5 million. And these are just numbers from this, and we're not talking about other inefficiencies, which I'll be talking about in a little bit. And lastly, this would have saved about 18,000 tons of carbon emissions had we saved shipping 3,000 containers. Had we shipped 3,000 containers fewer, carrying the same amount of cargo. This is just to kind of put things in perspective on how viable the solution and how big of an opportunity this is for our customers to bring efficiency to their supply chains and start thinking about trying to optimize for cargo flow than for protecting from any breakdowns only. Now, any finance person with this salt will tell you this, always optimize for cash flow rather than deploying cash into equity and just letting it sit on a non-appreciating asset. Inventory tends to be a depreciating asset. Now, it's all the more reason for you to keep moving inventory rather than investing in inventory that's just going to sit on the store shelves either at the factory or at your warehouses over here. Always you want your money working for you, you want your inventory working for you, and your inventory is not working when it's not moving. And that is what OceanMatch again solves for you. As I was telling you, the 4 other complementary benefits that essentially gets you to OceanMatch, besides the price savings and shipping alone, is the 4 topics I've listed here. In terms of lowering inventory carrying cost, what you see over here is today when you place a purchase order, let's assume your manufacturing lead times is 15 days, which is very optimistic, but let's call it 15 days, right? From the time you place the purchase order and producing, there's probably another 10-day lag between the time when your first product comes out of the production line to your last 1,000th unit comes out of the production line. And 10 days is, again, a very conservative estimate on when your entire 1,000 units are produced. So there is a 10 days that you probably might not be paying, but your factory is financing that inventory for those 10 days. And we're all stakeholders here. We're trying to hold each other's back or take care of each other along the way. Then you have to load the container, and then there's a 30-day transit time coming to the US, which is, again, a conservative estimate from, let's say, a China-based port to somewhere on the West Coast coming to your door, more or less, given the port congestion situations. Now, on the flip side, what we're saying is if you had using OceanMatch and you were not penalized for shipping, 200 units at a time instead of 1,000 units in one go, you break down your shipment into 5 pieces. You are now essentially starting to ship as 200 units get shipped, 200 units get produced, and this has a direct impact on your inventory carrying cost. You're not, it's a combination between you and your factory. I'm sure you can negotiate with your factory saying, hey, I'll ship it as they come out of the production line. This should save you in some money, and let's share the benefit of that. And OceanMatch will ensure that I'm not spending unnecessary costs in shipping. The second benefit being reducing risk in your supply chain. Customs exams are a known phenomenon. It is something, a necessary evil we need. This is a regulated industry, and for good reason. And when let's say you ship a full container and you have 1,000 units in there and it comes into the US, and let's assume customs picks you up for a random customs exam, which happens in every single supply chain around the world. And let's say that goes in for a VACUS exam and or an intensive for all I care, and it's going to be 10 days before it's before your container is available a lot of times. Now, and during those entire 10 days, your entire 1,000 units is stuck at inventory inside the customs bonded facility. Now, in terms of if you're breaking it down in OceanMatch and your shipping is 200 units, yes, you're probably one shipment got held. The probability of it drops significantly. That essentially mitigates the risk in your supply chain in terms of getting your entire inventory getting stopped at the border versus you having one shipment that got randomly picked. You have 800 more units that are coming at it every 2-day cadence right behind. The next one being redistributing a supply chain network. And this is a phenomenon we've seen more so towards our customers who have a very complicated distribution model where they bring cargo into 1 or 2 main DCs and then they feed it further into the rest of the country. This is something that happens today in a lot of major supply chains They bring it into the major gateways of LA or New York, and then or Atlanta or one of these big gateways, and then they feed it into the rest of the country. There is cost associated with that redistribution. There is time associated with that redistribution, which essentially goes back to costs to you. What we're now saying is, instead of having to ship, a full container into LA and then ship it into Denver, Salt Lake City, and Reno, for example, let's ship direct containers into Salt Lake City, Reno, and Las Vegas. And Flexport's OceanMatch program will help you anyway mitigate the additional cost you would have incurred by shipping underutilized containers, because we will find complementary customers within our network who can take that container and save you time and money. And the last one, of course, as I was talking about in terms of carbon emissions, by just far fewer containers, we all live this day in and day out. Port congestion is part of our lives. We live with this. And what are we doing about it besides investing in more infrastructure, asking our ports to become more efficient by investing in more infrastructure? We could do something about this. We can essentially reduce the number of containers in the world by just shipping far more efficiently. That would help. I mean, it's going to make a material impact if we get more efficient, if we bridge a 1/3 of the volume that is going empty right now, if we could utilize that space. And that'll have a direct impact on the number of containers being moved, the number of trucks that are waiting outside the port in line, the dwell time where these trucks are just idling inside the ports. All of this will have a direct impact on the carbon emissions. And with that, let's talk a little bit more about Eric and his experience with Flexport. Eric, would like to start off with some opening remarks, and then we could go into a little bit of a kind of a Q&A with you.
No, perfect. Yeah, definitely. Working with Flexport has been a great opportunity, and it's definitely benefited our supply chain and our transportation network. Just within the past year, we've seen a decrease in our costs by about 10%, and our transit times have decreased as well, about 10% as well. So we're seeing about anywhere from a 5 to 7 day decrease in that as well. And so as we transition from a basic type of apparel company to more of fashion, we're definitely flowing in a lot more product, as you mentioned in your presentation. And so this model has definitely helped us and reduced not only our inventory costs, but as well as reduced risk.
Great. Hey, super happy to hear that. It warms our heart when our customers say and tell us that, hey, we're extremely happy and we're thrilled about the benefits we bring to your supply chain, and we owe you a thank you for trusting us and trusting us with the most valuable part of your company, which is the inventory that you're selling to your customers. With that, let's just quickly. Can you tell us a little bit about, at a very high level, about your supply chain? What parts of the world you're shipping from, and what just a very high level overview.
Yeah. So currently we source our product from the Far East, Southeast Asia, South Asia, and the Middle East as well. Typically, all that product is going via boat and air, and it goes through to our port in LA, or to our warehouse or 3PL in LA, which then is fulfilled. We base our fulfillment based out of there. Gotcha.
And you guys are a fast growing company. When you're growing at the pace that you guys are growing at, it's just you are going to run into challenges that are either part of your growing pains, it's part of a lot of different factors that feed into it. Can you talk to us a little bit about the challenges that you guys faced, through the life cycle of your evolution, about the ocean freight side of your business, and like how did you go about mitigating or dealing with some of those?
Yeah, definitely. So we went from a traditional. So as you mentioned before, we're definitely growing at a pace it's a good problem to have. Every year we're at about 40% year over year in terms of growth. And so as we progress and as we've grown, our ocean network and the way we look at it has to have changed. The challenges that we were seeing initially were that we didn't have visibility, or there was a lot of rolled bookings just because we weren't meeting the typical volumes that some forwarders were wanting. to move. And now as we move towards our current model, what we're doing now is we utilize not only the work that you guys have provided, excuse me, but we've just transitioned more onto a regular type of program as well. We've developed the core competencies within the origin locations too. So.
Great. Yeah, and how does the Flexport digital platform kind of play into this to kind of make you or help you guys in your day-to-day as you continue this crazy growth path?
It's definitely provided a lot more visibility into it, more real-time updates as well. And the customer services portion has been great too. Very responsive, and typically within turn time, we're with communication within the hour or two. And so definitely for those very hot shipments where updates internally are needed to be given within a few hours, the team has definitely helped us. As we grow, we're definitely not only trying to meet our e-com deadlines, but also our B2B deadlines as well. And so we've had to rely heavily on the last minute shipments, whether it be air or ocean, as well.
That is incredibly, that's just so good to hear. And I will make sure that I pass along the feedback to the team back in New York, and David would be so thrilled to hear that we're taking care of your needs. And this is one thing that I want to also just, kind of, point to, is that we are available to our customers on the phone, on emails, on our messaging, on our app. This misconception of us trying to just automate away freight forwarding isn't just true. It's just not factual. We are using technology to make us more efficient. And you dial, our phone number, and you're going to talk to a human much faster than any other company you can think of. The first person who picks up is a human, and it's not a machine. And I just want to emphasize on that, as we continue here. So in terms of your supply chain, roughly what percentage of your sales is conventional retail versus e-commerce today?
So currently we're going about 80% of our sales through e-com, and then about, I would say, 18% B2B and 2% retail. But we are currently growing our omni-channel. And
Gotcha.
So we're expanding our retail market and our footprint here in the U.S.
Great, and I'm sure OceanMatch is. I'm hoping, and this is. I would love to have your thoughts over here. Is if you are a company that has 80% of your sales going through e-commerce, and we know for a fact it's no small number, and the volume you move, the demands of an e-commerce customer are drastically different, and there's and also, just as a side note, there is a misconception that, oh, only if you're dealing with e-commerce do you need to have this much of an agile supply chain. We tend to feel that regardless of whether you're an e-commerce company or you're in any other customer, you need to start adapting to the agile supply chain needs of the market. But specifically towards e-commerce, right? You need to plan for positioning inventory, all around the country as close as possible to your customers. How does kind of OceanMatch fit into all of this? And how do you think about this when you're thinking between OceanMatch, FCL, and LCL?
So definitely, currently at the moment, right? So we've been both on the flip side. We've had to have a container that was not at capacity or utilizing the entire container, and vice versa. We've had an LCL shipment that was just at a odd CBM or chargeable weight that wouldn't be economical to ship. And so definitely we've utilized the OceanMatch to its fullest potential. I like to compare it to kind of like one of those ride sharing apps, and definitely you just gain the benefits of not only cost savings, but definitely the transit times as well. We've seen just utilizing the service here, we project deliveries to almost the go live dates of a lot of our products. And
Wow.
So OceanMatch, it's a very tight schedule as we progress towards a fashion type of model.
Yeah.
But definitely The consistency within the program has definitely helped us, and it's made planning a lot easier and projections as well.
That's so good to hear because like one of the biggest questions when we were doing research on this was like, oh, what about liability or what about delays? How would you mitigate all of that? This was a big part of the research that we developed and we did is like, and the conclusion we came to was is there's something called the perceived risk versus what the real risk is. And this is the anecdote I tend to give to a lot of people is we as a human race, ditched the yellow cabs and got into random unmarked cars because an app told us to do so, right? The faith we had in that app made us saying, oh, yeah, you know what? I'm going to get in this car that has no markings on it, but I know the plates and this is what it's going to take me. And then somewhere along the way, they told us, hey, we're going to add another person on the car along the way and it's going in the same route and it's going to be cheaper. And we said, hell yeah. And for all we know, give it another year or so, we're going to call a car and the car is going to show up and the driver might not be in there and we're still going to get in that car because that's the faith we've developed in the platform, right? And that kind of fits into what you were saying earlier is like we want to be the platform that gives you the faith that hey, we got control over your products and we are giving you the visibility you need to feel comfortable about allowing us to consolidate and knowing at any given point where your shipment is down to the last SKU. And you're not looking at just a bill of lading number, you're looking at your SKU. If you are shipping white t-shirts, you can look for white t-shirts in your supply chain and giving you the comfort is what we are striving to achieve. By no means our job is done here. We're just getting started in innovating this, and we'll continue to invest in that, right? So, just curiously, like, how did you learn about OceanMatch? Is this something that you've been facing for a long time in terms of challenges, or is this something that we came to you first with and that helped you kind of connect the dots?
No, definitely Flexport was the one that proposed the solution, and it's been a great benefit for us. Previously, the way we were looking at shipments, just because we had such a tight deadline to meet our deliveries, we were purchasing a full container for a very small amount of freight, maybe 3 cubic meters to 5 cubic meters, and we were purchasing an entire container just to meet the deadline.
Wow.
And with Ocean, correct. And so the team here in New York is just, or we were shipping about maybe 10 cubic meters,
Yeah.
not even enough to fill up half of a 20-footer.
Yeah.
But the team here in New York is definitely, they proposed the solution and they modeled it out, and it was only marginally different in terms of the transit times. But the cost benefits were outweighed it, definitely. I believe it was almost about a 10% difference between an FCL versus the LCL, or sorry, the OceanMatch option.
Yeah.
So spread across all our shipments, it definitely adds up.
That's yeah, man. Oh my God, this is amazing, and this is exactly what we envisioned when we're building it, and it's always an amazing feeling to hear the same thing we expected to happen from our customers, and first off, thank you for allowing us to give you the solution, and you've been willing to try it out when it was a new product, and we're incredibly happy. So, overall, what has your experience been so far in terms of like, have you, is there any improvements or benefits you would suggest that we should be developing further, or have you seen that is, sticking out that, we could address a little further in this call?
No, definitely. I believe the program is you all are marching towards the right direction. And I believe it can only get better from there. So.
All right, man. Hey, thank you very, very much, Eric. Really, really great to hear from a client who's, enjoying what we're trying to do over here and who feels and, we feel like you're part of our team in terms of allowing us to do this. And we owe you this and a lot more in terms of making sure we're taking care of your needs. So anytime, just a matter of time, I'll email you my house address, my phone number. You'll know where I live. You can find me when you need me. I will be there for you. So thank you very much, man. And if you don't have any more questions for me, maybe we could jump into the audience questions. All right then. Thank you, Eric. So let's quickly, dive into a few questions we already have lined up that came up to us. Um, So the first question that I have in front of me is, what lanes are these OceanMatch service offerings being provided to customers on? So as I mentioned earlier, the success of this program is tied very close to us having a regularly built LCL program, because that's what we're matching with your underutilized space in your containers. And for that reason, we are exclusively focusing on lanes where we've built up our own LCL program, and that's, as I mentioned earlier, you have your Greater China, Taiwan, Korea, Vietnam, India, like predominantly Asian, Southeast Asian origins coming into the United States. Today, our LCL program covers 7 hubs in the United States, and then we further fan into a hub and spoke model further inland into the country. This is apart from Canada and Europe. We sail weekly boxes into Rotterdam, Hamburg, and Felixstowe. And we're going to continue to invest in growing that domestic footprint as well in Europe, so we're able to hit up more destinations. So OceanMatch is offered on practically these lanes, as I just mentioned to you, where we have a homegrown LCL product that's able to take that complementary space from the empty space in your containers. This is another interesting question in terms of what is the CBM cost comparison for OceanMatch versus FCL. Now, this is a very, very great question, and I'll tell you why. It is very easy to start looking at an FCL container, taking the 100% utilization, more or less 68 cubic meters. That's roughly what you can, probably about 90-95% utilization there. 68 cubic meters divided by the cost of ocean freight. Yeah, of course, the unit economics are going to be brilliant, which is why we're saying a 40 high cube is great. But when you compare it to an OceanMatch, right, and you're trying to see what is cheaper, you need to compare your OceanMatch per cubic meter rate and the rate you are utilizing your container for. So assuming 65% utilization, right, and doing a quick math over here, on 68 cubic meters, if you're achieving 65% utilization, so you're essentially shipping 45 cubic meters in a box, and let's, for the sake of argument, let's call it $1,000, right, or $20 for the sake of conversation. You're dividing it by 45. You're not dividing it by 68. It's just that's what drives the efficiency of OceanMatch, and that's where the difference comes in from. The next question I have is, can you speak to managing group transportation and how that's done? Can you also provide guidance to extension to air and rail with similar opportunities? I definitely get the second part of the question. The first part of the question, in terms of, I'm assuming this is referring to, I'm going to make an assumption here, to be fully honest with you. I'm assuming this is referring to a consolidation program. The consolidation program, and when we launched OceanMatch as well, we were very insistent about how this is a product powered by data. The most crucial factor over here in making this work is having the data to make the decision in real time. You do not have the luxury of, hey, I got 40 cubic meters, let's go look around the market on who has the remaining, 28 cubic meters. It just doesn't work that way. So having a very strong foundation of data that tells you what cargoes in your warehouse is crucial. And that's how, we've been essentially building these consoles, using, very, it started off as very rudimentary, planning softwares, and now we've gotten more and more sophisticated over the years. In terms of, guidance to how this is going to feature into air or rail, absolutely. But if you talk about it in terms of air, no customer is buying an entire ULD. You are essentially you're buying air freight per kilo. I can think of a very few customers who are shipping probably temperature sensitive or one of those envirotainers when you're buying a full container. Otherwise, you're not buying a full container in air freight. So I'm not particularly sure, and I'm also not the qualified person to answer that. Neil Jones Shah, who's our SVP of air freight, he is the man to answer this. In terms of rail, absolutely. That is definitely an opportunity that we will be attacking at some point down the line, but just not today. We want to, we believe in, we call this, peanut butter principle. We don't want to spread our resources thin across 50 different things. We want to focus on one and get this product perfected before we develop further. I'm sorry. What the question was basically, can you speak to managing ground transportation? Absolutely. This is an area, it was not group transportation in the question. Can you speak to managing ground transportation and how that's done? Absolutely. And this is where, again, Flexport's technology advantage comes into play. Having real-time data, and our drivers are giving us real-time data on their position. We know exactly how long a trucker waited outside the port of Long Beach to pick up a container. We know what time they picked up. We have pictures of the container when it's picked up. We have we have driven down, this maniacal focus on making sure that we have control and data to back our decision making. And so we built this platform knowing that, 5 days before the vessel arrives, we know that, okay, this is the vessel arrival. That's when we get the arrival notice. We plan saying, okay, these are the 3 shipments in there. This container needs to stop at the warehouse. This is the day we are projecting. And we have a rich source of data that predicts when a terminal is going to make a container available. We've been collecting these data for every single container that goes through every single terminal, be it Everport, be it a different terminal in LA. We have that data that helps us predict, saying, okay, if the vessel is arriving on, let's say, June 27th, we are predicting the container to be available on June 29th. We're going to pick it up. And so there is a mapping that is done. And there is a team of dedicated people who are focused in making sure that this plan is automatically passed on to our vendors, our trucking partners, who are following through this, right? And the platform we built is a workflow management system. It's not a file management system that essentially is telling our partners, hey, it's this day, you should have done this. If you have not done this, something is wrong. You got to report back. And that's how we manage our ground transportation. In terms of somebody just reached out saying we appreciate the questions and love to connect on LinkedIn. I'd love to talk more about this offline. Absolutely, I'm available. Please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Trust me, I am the biggest freight nerd you're going to ever meet in your life. Nothing gets me off than freight in the morning out of bed. I am so excited to talk about this, and I can talk about this for hours. In terms of, you mentioned OceanMatch allows a max of 2 incremental shipments per container. How was that number decided on, and does Flexport expect this number to hold firm, or might it go up or down? Does Flexport think there is an OceanMatch market for temperature controlled shipments? Phenomenal questions. The number of capping it at 3 came after doing enough due diligence. Now, what I'm about to say in terms of our customs exam rates, which is another question that keeps coming up, is I don't want my cargo being held for customs. Now, I can give you my word that our customs exam rates for the last 6 months have been sub 1%. Now, I can challenge any other option out there. Our numbers are the holy grail over here in terms of sub 1% customs exam rate in LCL. That's unheard of. Now, we want to make sure we optimize for that. We do not, the purpose of this is to de-risk your supply chain, not to add more risk to it. And so capping it at 3 statistically made sense to us, and we were able to run regression numbers to kind of come up with that magic 3 shipment cap. Absolutely, we are never stuck or digging our heels into one decision. We are absolutely open to, keep evolving over time. If we do see a reason to say, hey, we can move this to 5, or no, we probably want to cap this at 2, we will definitely look into that as time progresses. In terms of temperature control shipments, oh, absolutely. And I think there is plenty more opportunity there in terms of the amount of revenue or the dollars spent in temperature control shipments. But there are far fewer customers, right? The biggest thing in terms of building a LCL business or even an OceanMatch product is scale. You need tremendous amount of scale to do this efficiently. Otherwise, you're just subsidizing freight. You're just like pretty much giving it away, right? So the number of customers are shipping temperature controlled freight, getting them in one space so that we can, getting them all on our platform and having that scale, that is a focus, a dedicated attention we need to give to develop on that vertical. And I'm not going to say that it is happening tomorrow, but it's not too far in the future. It's going to happen at some point, and we will definitely be reaching out to you. Please feel free to hit us up if you're interested. The next question, we have 8 minutes on the clock. I'm going to continue on here. Would we be able to do OceanMatch on our own orders? For example, if there are 3 orders from different companies are going to the same port, can we organize it so that our 3 orders be placed together? Absolutely. That's the whole idea. We believe, or we live in a world where we joke around the office. A console is a console is a console. right? You can call it LCL, you can call it OceanMatch, you can call it Buyer's Console, you can call it any other sophisticated way the world of freight forwarding has created this to be, in an act of building sophistication here. 100%. You should be able to. The purpose is here to improve efficiency, and you should be able to do this, and we will be able to coordinate this. So that is actually, something that we will be talking about more in the subsequent quarters. There is a succession plan to make this product to take it to the next level, where we essentially become your de facto supply chain team who decides whether, or who helps you decide between LCL, OceanMatch, and Buyer's Console on a real-time basis, and manage your supply chain for you with your support. So yes, the answer to your question, absolutely, we can do that. Please reach out to us, and we'll be happy to take you through that. The next one, I usually ship LCL. What is the minimum threshold for considering OceanMatch? So statistically, we have analyzed to arrive at this conclusion that your shipments need to be 10 to be 15 and 55 cubic meters. That's the spread when OceanMatch starts making sense. If you're less than 15 cubic meters, it just makes sense for you to ship LCL. And this is a phenomenon because, again, this is a matter of scale. At what point does the cost benefit analysis make sense? And 15 to 55 is when it makes sense. If you're over 55, you're probably better off shipping your own container. And if you're less than 15, you're better off shipping LCL. You're probably going to save money. And then I think the next question I have here is, so when we request a quote, do we have to request OceanMatch, or will you automatically be doing this for all customers? This is a part where we're investing a lot more on right now, where we will be providing this automatically to all customers. And I'll be the first one to admit we are developing both product technology and capabilities in other areas to be able to do this dynamically on a real-time basis for every shipment quote that comes through. But today, it's still a product that's nascent. We want to get your buy-in. We want to know what our customers are buying into. And so this is something that we would we would really appreciate it if you request it. But we do have a team that's monitoring every shipment that's coming through to target and reach out to you and be like, hey, there is a potential $500, $1,000 savings over here. Would you like to consider it? So don't be surprised if you see that message. Those messages go out on a daily basis, and we'll be able to assist. Down to the last 5 minutes here. The next questions, and I have a few over here. So let's talk about, is there any info I can send to the rest of my company about OceanMatch? Absolutely. So along with the information that's coming back to you with the webinar recording, we will be sending a one-pager that should be available to be circulated within your company. Absolutely reach out to your account reps for further information, and feel free to ask for me by name, or if you find my voice boring, I have many more people on the team who are willing to talk to you. So do not hesitate. And would there be any changes needed at the receiving warehouse? Absolutely not. The one thing that we do insist on is that, hey, we want to make sure that we are, sticking to that 1 to 2 day timeline of additional transit time. So a lot of times it's like, hey, please, be conducive of the appointment time frame. We want to set an appointment with you, and please be as supportive. And we understand in real time things change, but please be supportive when the container shows up. Please be, have labor available to kind of get the container unloaded. And again, we fully understand exceptions happen, and we live that world. I mean, a freight forwarder faces more exceptions in life than probably any other career you could choose. So we understand what you go through. What's next on the horizon for OceanMatch? I can promise you this much: we're constantly tinkering with this product, and we're pushing the boundaries on what OceanMatch can do for our customers. So as I was mentioning earlier, there is a product that we're working on where we're going to get in, start getting you or helping you more and more towards helping manage between whether LCL or OceanMatch or Buyer's Consoles would make sense for you. So that is something that's going to be coming out in the next couple quarters. Please look out for that. Please feel free to reach out about it now. We'll be happy to talk to you about it. You could be one of those customers who can help us kind of pilot it with you before we go out in the world. And With that, I would like to thank everybody who took the time this morning out of your schedules to get in on this call, and I especially would like to thank Eric. Hey, it was a pleasure talking to you, man. Thank you very much for everything you've for being an amazing customer, and more importantly, for being on this call today.
No, thank you, Ram. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. And a few quick closing notes. As I mentioned earlier, a recording of the webinar will be distributed within 24 hours. If you would like to receive an OceanMatch quote and you're already currently shipping with Flexport, please reach out to your squads. And and if you're not shipping with Flexport, you should probably reach out to us just to understand what the squad structure is, because that is amazing. It'll blow your mind. And also, the best way to reach out to us if you're not a Flexport customer today is please email hello@flexport.com, hello@flexport.com, to receive an OceanMatch quote and learn more about us. With that, I'd like to thank everybody, and I hope you guys have a great day.